Can you hear
Good.
me okay?
Yep, hear you fine. So here's your 10 minutes, ready to go?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here. And so I decided to do it from teacher to writer, which is what I am today, a journey in a number of quotations. So I'm going to apologise now because my maths is rubbish. So first of all, I thought, oh, great, 10 slides, 10 quotes, etc. Then I read that the title quote was included, and then I went down to 9, down to 8, etc. But as you'll see, maths is not my thing. And I think a lot of people who are involved in English teaching say the same thing, don't we? But today I would probably call myself a full-time ELT author. But I also would say that from the very beginning of my career, when I was teaching, I've always been writing materials. And I believe that all English teachers are materials writers. So at the moment, I would say that probably 85% of my time is taken up with writing, maybe 10% of my time teach training, and then maybe the remaining 17% teaching. Okay, so I've decided to do this through quotations. My career started in 1987 when I did my first ELT teaching qualification, if you like, an RSA CELTA course, or an RSA Prep Cert it was at the time. And I was living in Madrid and I started teaching private classes. I inherited a lot of classes from a friend of mine who left the city soon after I arrived. Now, I don't know when she left, whether those two things are connected at all. I'd like to think not. But I was in a really good position because she had to find a replacement teacher for her students, and I happened to be there looking for work. And as Plato says, necessity is the mother of invention. And I had to start creating materials for my classes because I was teaching hundreds of classes of all kinds. So I was teaching children, teenagers, business English classes. I had a librarian, a pilot. I was teaching some hotel staff, etc. And at that time, there were not as many materials as there are today, and they were very, very expensive. So I immediately started creating my materials and became an ELT writer, I believe. And I suppose at that time, I was spending about 40% of my work time on teaching, about 50% of my work time on writing materials, and the other 35% on traveling around the city, going from class to class. So my first years were crazy. I was finding materials everywhere. We've all done this, I'm sure. So getting articles from a newspaper, cutting them out, tipexing to make gap fills, etc. And I quite like this quote I came across by Edgar Allan Poe, which kind of sums up a little bit where I was at. So the best things in life make you what? I'm going to ask you, if you're in the chat box, to say what you think that word is. And this is certainly true for me. I was traveling from the south of the city to the north of the city, east, west, etc. And definitely by the end of every day, I was getting rather sweaty. So around about this time, or after about a year of doing this, running around teaching private classes, I decided that I needed to do a bit more professional development, if you like. So I did a Montessori course where I specialized in teaching children. And this was a real eye-opener because children are a whole different ball game. And I got a job in a primary, in a primary school, and I was teaching the very young learners. I had 4-year-olds. And this is when I learned that all classes are mixed ability classes. And I like this quote from Dr. Seuss, because each child is an individual. Each person obviously is an individual. And some children I noticed were good at some things, some needed more support, etc. So I started adapting materials. At this point, I didn't have to make all my materials because I was in a school, but I did need to adapt them. I needed to make extra things for fast finishers, and I had to make some kind of extra support materials for those who needed it. And I really enjoyed this time of my career, if you like. It was quite early on. So as I was teaching children, I really got into teaching children, and I quite like this quote from Bruce Lee, because I think it explains or describes my attitude to materials writing really well. So it says, well, you can read it yourself, yeah, but absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. And I call this my cardboard box years, because we hear sometimes that we need to think outside the box, or sometimes more these days, people are saying, no, we shouldn't do that. We should stay within the box. But I was obsessed with boxes during this time, because boxes were everything to me. I used to use them to create games. I had lots of packs of cards, flashcards, etc., etc. And what I learned at this time too, that this quote kind of says, I think, is you can get a really useful idea like a game, and then you can add something to it that is specifically your own, and use it again and again and again. Change it a little bit, tweak it, but if it's not broken, don't throw it out. And there's nothing wrong with borrowing and collecting ideas. That's what we do when we create materials or create anything. I'm sure Hania would agree. So about moving on about maybe 10 years, suddenly everything was going digital. I call this my dark phase, because I was absolutely terrified. I'm not a technical minded person at all, and I don't like technology as a general rule. But I think really what I'm doing sometimes when I say this is I'm kind of finding excuses, yeah. But round about this time, and I think this quote sums it up again from Kafka, productivity is being able to do things that you were never able to do before. And as teachers, we're very productive. We're always producing things and coming up with ideas. And as a materials writer, this is also true. So around about this time, I realized that I needed to reinvent myself, learn new skills, and I was invited to give a talk at the Morsig event, the Materials Writers event at IATEFL in 2013, I think it was. And they asked me to speak about being a digital writer. And I said to them, that's lovely, and thank you for inviting me, but I'm not a digital writer. And they laughed and they said, yes, you are. You did this, you did that. And then I realized that I had learned things and done things that I hadn't even been aware of. And sometimes I think it's quite nice to stop and think about all the things you've learned in the previous 3 months or so, things that you've been able to do that you might not have thought you were able to do previously, because we can all do things that other people can't. Okay, we've all got our skills. So there comes a point in your life when you become what I would say a full-time freelance writer, which is what I am today, when you have to decide to make that decision to give up your day job, if you like, because for years and years and years I was teaching and training and writing, and then it came to a point where I thought I can't progress with my writing while I'm using so much energy and time on my teaching. It's one or the other, something's got to go, and it's a risk. Okay, so I like this quote from Richard Bach. So professional writer is an amateur writer, is an amateur who didn't quit. And there was a time when I thought, shall I quit? Because if you're going to be freelance as well, you can't ever be entirely certain that you're going to get another job. You only know the job that you've already got. Yeah, so it's quite tempting to stay. I had a teaching job with the British Council in Bilbao, etc., and it would have been tempting to stay, but I didn't. I left. And then very quickly running on, so I learned then the following few months that alone we can do little and together we can do much. So I was alone as a writer, but I started hooking up with other writers, joining groups, etc., collaborating. And right now, I'd like to end with this one. So there are 3 rules for writing anything. So does anybody know what they are? Very, very quickly in the chat box. Okay, so the end of the quote is, unfortunately, no one knows what they are, because in actual fact, they don't exist. So it's not a destination, it's the journey. And I'd like to wish you all a very happy journey. Thank you.